there's a lot of external factors that are pushing inflation up. So, we're at a 40-year high in the United States. We're seeing, I think, a 40-year high or in the UK, in the euro. That's because of the war that is cutting supply chains and impacting availability of food. You've seen what's going on with wheat. You've seen oil prices push up. So I think 18.6% is the 5-year high that we have. So it's really, really rough. 18.6%. I haven't seen this level of inflation since around 2017.
But look what Russia is doing to the whole world. I mean, Russia invaded Ukraine and it's affecting just about every country in the world, Nigeria inclusive.
Yeah, it's really, really rough. And it's something that I'm not sure sanctions are working on Russia at all at this point. They seem to, as far as them being able to continue to sell oil and gas around the world. India is still buying. China is still buying. I think Saudi Arabia is still buying as well. They're still making enough money to fund this war. So right now, everybody, especially emerging markets, they are the ones that are really, really suffering. If you look at, in fact, to even add to it, if you look at the United States is basically exporting inflation to emerging markets like Nigeria, because as they continue to raise interest rates, it makes the dollar more attractive. Right. Because it's attracting investments to United States securities. So you're going to demand dollars in order to participate in those securities to get the return. And so as that increases, as the dollar continues to rise in as far as it's compared to other exchange rates, or rather compared to other currencies, and rates rise, that makes importing items from the US into Nigeria more expensive.
So now let's talk about food inflation, Rotus. What do you also see there?
Food inflation is at, I think, 20%. That's also climbed as well. And that's been the primary reason that we're seeing inflation figures where they are. Food and fuel. I think what was it now? The cost of going from, I think, Ajah to Bonny Camp. This is talking about transportation now. It's about, I think I understand it's risen from 400 Naira to 1,000 Naira now, about 150% increase.
Wow.
The fuel scarcity that we've been seeing, around the country, that's also impacted. And then the Okada ban, the fact that people don't have an alternative means outside of buses, the buses are taking full advantage of that. So, a majority of what Nigerians spend their money on is on food and also on fuel. So you put that together and it's a really, really tough situation for the average Nigerian.
Exactly. And what about investors and their returns?
Yeah, that's another one that's pretty tough. I mean, you would now be demanding, if you're an investor, you need to have at least 19%, in investment returns in order to stay above water, and in order for your investment to have what's called a positive real rate of return. So each time inflation inches up, that just continues to be an issue for any investor. And if you look at what's been going on, also foreign exchange liquidity has also impacted investors that are here, because they're not able to repatriate their funds out of the country. So, that's playing a role as well. But yeah, so, this is something to where anyone now who is investing in Nigeria, you want more on your investment returns, because inflation is eating up your gains, in addition to eating up your purchasing power of the currency. So it's just rough all around.
But are there any economic metrics, showing Nigeria combating inflation in any form, in anywhere at all?
I'm not seeing it. So, if the federal government was doing what's called inflation targeting, Maybe. I know the Monetary Policy Committee at their last meeting, they raised the benchmark interest rates, but it's not rising as
But
fast.
by the way, they're meeting this week. Do you think their decision will be, regarding the benchmark interest rate in the country? Are we going to see it reduce or increase even further, or just stay stable?
Yeah, I mean, there's no, as far as them reducing the rates, that one, I doubt that happens, because if you reduce the rates, theoretically you make borrowing cheaper, which puts more money in people's hands, which means they speculate more on FX, and that puts pressure on the currency. So if you increase the rates, you kind of strangle aggregate demand just by making things more expensive. So I don't know if, I can't remember the last time we saw back-to-back rate hikes from the NPR, or the MPC rather. So I think they might just stay the course. They might keep the rates where it is in order to see how things impact. But their hand is being forced by inflation, because at the last meeting, they said that inflation was the reason why they're trying to increase the rate to combat it. Because you have to increase the rates to make Naira securities more attractive and bring foreign investors back here. But outside of the FX liquidity issue, if investors are not enticed enough, if the rate is not commensurate to inflation, they probably won't come in. So it's a tight spot, because look at Ghana, for instance. Ghana has been raising rates, their rates, benchmark rates, their MPC, since November of last year. And inflation in Ghana is like 29, I think it's 29.6%. I mean, they are 28.6 or something. They're pushing 30% in Ghana. It's really just accelerated beyond their wildest dreams. And that's a really tough situation for them. I think they're meeting they're meeting this week. Ghana's MPC is meeting this week as well as next week. So it's really rough.
When you talk about Ghana, there's this introduction of 15% base pay allowance for public workers. There are other ways that they're going about this for workers in their country. We're not seeing that in Nigeria, Rotus.
Yeah, so I mean, and nothing comes at a cost, because that base pay allowance is 15% of your base pay for a public worker that's being given in addition. I think they came up with that with some labor unions. There were protests in Accra last month as a result of cost of living rising. And it's not just...
Sorry, Rotus, just to cut you in. In Nigeria, the NLC here plans a protest, but not because of the inflation rates and the hardship Nigerians are facing, rather because they want our children to go back to the classrooms. ASU has been on strike in the past 6 months. So you see that we have, huge problems here in Nigeria. But quickly, let's just run through some of the messages, quite a lot of them. Then you can react to some of the messages before we wrap up the show.
Okay, fine.
Great. Benga Komu says, what are the measures to take in curbing inflation in Nigeria? Is the government doing anything about it? How far are we from Sri Lanka? And Rotus has talked about some of your questions, but let's keep it going. Is Nigeria really reporting 18.6%? It should be higher considering the global inflation. Please look at other emerging markets inflation and the dollar demand impact. Who they demand Naira? Food inflation is crazy. Abego Damio is the one who sent that in. Inflation in Nigeria has become a real adversary. However, who else doesn't believe the inflation figures from the NDS? Nigeria's core inflation should probably be around 30 to 40%. Jonah is the one who sent that in. Russia didn't just start this nonsense, Pepple. The US and NATO set the ball in motion. If and only people learn to mind their own business and stay off unnecessary affairs. We're still battling the forceful going green pronouncement and now Ukraine. Funny, there's been no ammunition made from green energy. So the mess in the world right now is solely Biden, Bojo, and Putin. Thank God one of them is out. And we take this other message, my goodness, it's quite a lot. It's important we x-ray the Ukraine-Russia situation. I'm not sure it's right to say Russia just invaded Ukraine. Maybe you can invite an expert to talk on it. Western countries wouldn't take what they wanted Russia to take. And I think that's the cause of the war. This scenario was unnecessary if they engaged Russia. Now we go to Saudi for help. Sad. Nigeria is probably the biggest bind in the long time, inflation is generally cost push inflation, so it will not be significantly impacted by a rate hike. Nigeria needs FX, so a significant jump in MPR has to happen. 400 basis points with improvements in security would be needed to make dollar liquidity return and douse the inflation trend a little in the shorter term. Lenin sent that in. You want to react?
Yeah, a 400 basis points increase would be astronomically high. I don't know if they're going to go that far. So if that would be taking it to about 17%. With respect to the what can be done, there's the exchange rates. I mean, there was a webinar this weekend where Dayo Obisan, who is the executive, I think, commissioner at the SEC for operations, he was saying that exchange rate harmonization has to be done in order to try to tamper down inflation, because there's an exchange rate pass-through effect. So that has to be addressed. So I mean, I appreciate all the messages. It's a tough spot. I wouldn't want to be the NPC if I was them, but I will see what decision they make. I think by tomorrow we'll find out what happens. But everybody just has to brace up and hold tight.
I really wish we had so much time on the show. I wanted to find out about the webinar, Nigeria's Economic Outlook, what was said. I know you touched on it just a bit.
Yeah, actually, we'll have Nairametrics tomorrow, and
great.
We'll get into it with them tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Rotus. Always a pleasure having you on the show. Let's keep the conversation going on Twitter. It's at Rotanquote. All right. Tag us in as well. Smooth981 FM. We'll do this again tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. My name is Pepple. Have a good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rotus. Thank you, everyone, for joining.